afternoon, good evening. Welcome to BCTV's Candidates Corner. Shows that bring you the candidates that will be running for the different offices in Bedford coming up in March. Election day is March 12th at the high school from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So please make sure you get out and vote. Today we're very happy to have Mike Kenny. Mike is running for the school board here in Bedford. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you start off, just tell us a little bit about your background, how long you lived in town, what do you do for a living, family, etc.?
I'm a transplant from Massachusetts, Central Mass. I moved to New Hampshire about 22 years ago. I've been in Bedford for almost 4 years now. Mostly prior to that was Nashua and Merrimack. I went to a parochial school, Catholic parochial school. My parents were mill workers, and to this day, I still wonder how on a mill worker's pay they could afford 4 kids at a private elementary school, but they did. All of us went to public high schools. Myself and my next younger sister went to the local school, and after that, we moved out into a different town. My younger brother and sister went to a different high school, but they were public high schools. First thing I noticed when I was a freshman in high school was, competency-wise, I was 3 years ahead of all those who went to the junior high. And that says a lot about private schools, to be honest. I graduated there. I'm not going to tell you when. Moby Dick was still a minnow back then. I went to the community college only because it was right across the street from the high school. It made it real easy for me. I could still walk. And I received an associate's degree in general studies, which is basically a degree telling you don't have a clue what you want to do in life, okay, but you have a 2-year college degree. Eventually I went in the Navy, and I made a career out of the Navy, retired out of the Navy. And while I was in the Navy, Uncle Sam was good enough to help pay for my bachelor's degree, compliments of the Vietnam GI Bill. Well, it took me 7 years to get an associate's degree, another 7 years beyond that to get my bachelor's degree, so I was a little slow. And then 20 years later, I got my master's degree. Well, that kind of kept on snowballing a little bit, and I finally ended up with 3 master's degrees, 2 in education, master arts, education with a concentration in adult learning, which is primarily who I teach as adults, a master's degree in education, master of science in instructional design, curriculum design for pedagogy, and a master's in fine arts, which is my terminal degree, my teaching credential at NHTI in Concord. I'm also enrolled in a doctorate program, Doctor of Education, Leadership and Management, and my specialty and concentration is local, state, and national education policy. So I definitely have a vested interest in what happens at the local level, and I guess what they say is all politics is local. And I have a big concern about some of the high school graduates I see coming into my classes. And that's why I'm running, to be honest. I want to see the quality improve for the educational level, especially in the language arts, since I teach English. You know, the course that puts fear and trepidation in the hearts of incoming freshmen. And I see the reading comprehension levels probably somewhere between the 8th grade and grade 10. They're supposed to be grade 13 when they come to my class. And I don't want to point fingers at anybody. I think there's enough blame to go around between the federal government, the state, local school districts, and the community college. But we'll discuss that during the dialogue.
Well, good. Sounds like you've spent a lot of time in school and have learned a lot as you went along.
If you're a lifelong learner, there's a couple of things you learn. One thing is, as long as you stay in school, you don't have to pay the student loans back.
Very good. So I guess one of the bigger questions is, what made you want to step up and run for the school board?
Basically because I failed 25 to 30% of my student class, my freshman class, because they have inadequate or anemic reading skills, writing skills. Grammar is atrocious. I gave a reading assignment the other day in class type assignment, and just listening to my students, freshman students, and they're probably somewhere between 18 and 22. And they were struggling on words that I knew in the 4th grade. And I'm just kind of going like this, and I'm wondering what's going on here. I didn't ask them where they went to high school. Okay, I just want to know where did they get their skill sets. The writing is unbelievable on occasion. Don't get me wrong, I have some aces in my class, okay, but most of them are not. Most of them are average to maybe even subpar, to be honest. And I'll be honest, Ken, it breaks my heart when I have to fail a quarter of my class because something's wrong, and it came before me.
Right. That's very interesting. I didn't realize that they were at that level. I know that in reading articles that a lot of the folks starting college are having to take remedial courses.
I had a student confide in me 2 weeks ago after class, first day of class. He said, "Professor, I have a 7th grade reading level." And I said, "How do you know?" He says, "Because I've been diagnosed with ADHD." And I said, "Okay, I need to know what we can do to accommodate you per FERPA and disabilities accommodation to work with you." One of the issues I have is with the community colleges, because we have open enrollment policies. There is no entrance exams. If you go to UNH, St. A's, I guarantee you're going to have an admissions test, not at the community college level. It boils down to this: if you got the money, honey, they got the time. And I have big problems with that.
What do you think one of your main focuses would be if you get to be elected to work within the Bedford school system?
I see a decline in priorities over the years. My grandson was in t-ball last year, now he's in basketball. And at the end of the season, all the participants get participant trophies. There is no number 1, 2, or 3. It's all participants. And I asked the coach and I asked a couple of teachers, I said, "Why is that?" And he says, "Well, we don't want to hurt your self-esteem."
Yeah.
And I said, "So 10, 15 years from now, when they're applying for jobs, competing with other people, and they get rejected by a potential employer, how do you think their self-esteem is going to be affected then?" Because they're not competitive enough and they don't have the skill sets, okay, to make it. And the people in question had no response to that. I see this emphasis upon self-esteem versus integrity. Integrity, responsibility, and accounting breeds self-esteem, not vice versa. And I think the competencies and skill sets that a lot of students have been learning K to 12 is not what's required. A few years ago, I was teaching a remedial class at a different college, and I came across a survey of 1,200 CEOs and executives of Fortune 1000 companies. And they were asked one simple question: what skill sets are you looking for potential employers in the 21st century in a business-based environment? And I was wrong. When I saw the results of the survey, I was even wrong. 30 years ago, on a resume, you would see things like, and I mentioned this in the debate, you're things like, I'm a team player, I'm multitask, I can walk and chew gum at the same time, on and on and on. Well, that's really nice, but those are ancillary to peripheral things. What the business execs were looking for were 3 things: the ability to read, write, and speak standard American English. And the reason why is if you're not proficient in English, you're not going to make it in today's society. The number 2 language in the world is English. The number 1 language in the world, believe it or not, is Mandarin Chinese, but that's a misnomer because it's located within China. But the number 1 language in business throughout the entire planet is English. If you're not proficient in English, you're not going to make it in business. Bottom line, that's it. If you're not proficient in English, how are you going to make it through college? How can you write a research paper? If you're going to go to graduate level, how can you conduct independent research if you can't communicate? So that's my emphasis. I want to make sure that whoever comes out of the high school system and the prep work, elementary, K to 8, okay, has the relevant language arts skills, because from my perspective as a community college professor, mostly teaching freshmen, English Composition 1 is the foundation course for everything. If you go to a social studies, I don't care if you're in a technical curriculum, eventually you're going to have to write some research papers. And if you can't communicate effectively, you're going to be lost. Okay, you're not going to be competitive. So that's my primary focus.
I agree to a certain extent. I know when my children went through the school system, I brought up the point. When I was in 8th grade, we had to write term papers.
Absolutely.
Footnotes, everything. I didn't see that emphasis on writing that was taking place. Now, that was quite a few years ago that my kids went through the system. I'm hoping that some of that has changed, but I'm not really sure.
I asked my students yesterday in class, I said, how many had to write essays in class? Half of them raised their hands, half did not. So I queried them, I said, how many essays did you write in 4 years of high school? 2. I went, 2 essays?
Yep.
And they said, yeah. And I just had to shake my head.
Yep.
They're not prepared. Now, I'm not so concerned about those that are earmarked for 4-year colleges and universities, because I know they have the grade point average and the academic skills to back it up. The students I'm concerned about are the ones that are not really sure what they're going to do out of high school. When they finally figured out, I don't want to work at McDonald's or Burger King or Shaw's or Market Basket, and I don't want to go in the military. Oh, well, what am I going to do now? I'm going to go to community college, okay? And I'm going to live home with mom and dad, okay, for a couple of years till I figure it out. Those are the students I'm concerned about.
Where do you stand, or your ideas on the IB program?
Starting last summer in my failed run for the state senate, I started doing some research on IB. And initially I was pretty impressed when I saw the curriculum. But I'm a critical thinker. I challenge assumptions, good, bad, and ugly. And I data mine. I try and dig as deep down as I can to get to core issues. I've reversed that position for several reasons. Primary reason is it's a European-based educational environment, primarily sponsored outside of Switzerland, where it's hosted, sponsored by UN and UNESCO. One of the leading things in the charter for UNESCO is world governance. I have a problem with that. I've seen a lot of affidavits from principals and teachers of IB that were in Africa that basically made their schools go belly up. It destroyed the school systems there in Central Africa. I've read good affidavits from students. I've read bad affidavits. The costs for IB to implement in a 5-year plan, in my opinion, are exorbitant. Now, Bo, New Hampshire, and I had the affidavit in there from the ex-principal there, and he was a little dismayed that Bo rejected it. They rejected it because the cost was going to be between 3.1 mil and 3.8 mil to implement over a 5-year time frame. Bo, New Hampshire is not like Bedford, New Hampshire.
Right.
Bedford's a little bit more affluent community, where Bo is a little bit more blue-collar, middle-class community. It was just too expensive, to be honest. The curriculum, I looked at the curriculum. I like the curriculum, but I also have some issues. For example, how it's implemented in Bedford. There were 3 classes being taught in the IB curriculum in Bedford that I found that are not on the IB core curriculum. In other words, Bedford High School is modifying the IB. My question to that would be, Ken, if they're modifying the IB core curriculum, are they not deviating from, okay, their charter as an IB school? Does it negate that charter? I don't know. I'd have to research that. I want to see a return on investment. And the thing that really bothers me, I see no audit trail for students that do the standard level or the high level courses going on to college. I get no I see nothing online anywhere with feedback saying these students have really produced up to their academic levels. Any businessman will tell you they want to see ROI, return on investment.
Right.
I don't see that just yet.
So where do you stand on the AP programs then?
I endorse AP, advanced placement. Advanced placement is in over 60 countries, every state of the union. They have at least 34 courses that I know of that are top-notch courses. They're comparable to the IB. In fact, I think they excel, to be honest. Another problem with IB in general, there's only 2 colleges in New Hampshire that accept IB credits. That's UNH and St. A's. Every college that I know, 4-year university, accepts AP.
Yep.
So the standardization is there, the acceptance is there. The 6 regional accrediting bodies for colleges across the United States accept AP. I haven't heard them accepting IB credits. And the other thing is, it's a misnomer when you hear the whole idea of international baccalaureate.
Yeah.
You don't get a bachelor's degree. The max amount of credits you can come out of high school is 45, typically 24. I've got to break off for UNH in St. A's. St. A's at this time only accepts 8. Okay, and I don't see anything in their acceptance criteria other than subjective, something the department had whether they accept it or not. And I don't see anything there at all that says they're going to transfer those credits to core curriculum, core courses like English, math, etc. I suspect what they're doing is sliding them down the scale to free elective classes, to be honest. So I endorse AP, but not IB.
You mentioned Common Core. Where do you think about the Common Core curriculum?
The Common Core curriculum for the state's initiative, I find it interesting that in No Child Left Behind, the federal government leaves up to the state to make the assessment criteria. Then the states revert back at the higher level, and they want to become standardized. Okay, they did a 380, 360. I'm for standardization as long as it's based on minimum standards. There's a certain amount of subjectivity in being competitive in assessment. There's 3 types of assessments that are typically in education and a lot of other disciplines. Initial, formative, and summative. Initial is like the Wonderlic test, getting into a college, admission test, etc. Disabilities testing, stuff like this. Formative assessing is what teachers and educators do overall on a regular basis, and we test our students, whether it be verbal questioning or written tests, etc. That's formative testing. It occurs naturally on a regular basis. Summative testing is typically comprehensive. At doctoral level, it would be like comprehensive exams between your core courses and your dissertation. And that's what I like to focus on. Show me you can do the walk, not just the talk. That's summative, basically. If you were a chef checking your wonderful spaghetti sauce, Ken Hawkins magic spaghetti sauce, when you check it as formative, when I, the customer, check it, I love it, I go, yay, Ken, okay, that's summative. Okay, you showed me you could do the walk. The issue I have with Common Core is not their courses. What I have is the inflexibility to have any instructors add on or modify it to enhance the assessment. And like the typical federal government, everything becomes etched in stone. Just like No Child Left Behind, how they tied into a Title I funding and stuff like that. We as educators, especially at the collegiate level, we need flexibility. Looking at IB and Common Core, there's something I think is very conspicuously absent. I really don't see the emphasis on critical thinking. I really don't. At the college level, you have to be critical thinker, which means you have to challenge assumptions. You have to be you can't accept anything verbatim at face value. You have to do the research and then follow a logical decision from what I consider the 5-step decision-making process, okay, to come up to some logical conclusions. Not that you're always going to be right, but the probabilities, most of the time you will be right if you follow a legitimate sequential aspect for the decision-making process. I don't see the critical thinking skills. I see bits and pieces throughout, okay, but I don't see a core thread, okay, which I think needs to really start back around the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, to be honest.
What's your vision for the future of Bedford public education going forward?
Well, right now we're number 2 in the state. Hollis Brookline is number 1, so we earned the silver medal, and that's fine. And everybody applauds this. I applaud it. We all applaud it. But there's one statistic that's been overlooked that people don't want to talk about. Out of the top 1,000 high schools in the nation, we're 905th. The top 100 high schools are mostly made from private high schools. My vision for Bedford, especially the high school level, is to put us in the top 100 to make a public high school competitive with a strong private high school. I see all the statistics for Bedford. We're on a good path right now, to be honest, okay? But I wonder why we're 905th, okay? What brought us 800 out of the place? That's what I really want to know. So my objective, my vision for the school board and the district in general is to bring us down. I want Bedford High to be the 100. I want it to be number 1, obviously, but at least within the top 100 nationwide.
Well, you talked about the private schools seemingly being rated higher than a lot of the public. What's the biggest hindrance that you can see to the public education system?
Oh boy, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot on this, and you know it. when President Eisenhower was leaving office, he made a comment which still echoes today. He says, "Beware the military-industrial complex." The education system is so wrapped up and intertwined with teachers' unions and the federal government being, in my opinion, the major hindrances. Now, private schools have to work with federal guidelines, but they don't have the teachers' unions on their side. Okay, most of the private schools that I know, I don't know any unionized Catholic nuns, do you? Okay, and that's a major factor. Okay, you have opposing forces. You may have an administration thinking one way, the teachers' union thinking another, the school board thinking another way, and then Uncle Sugar saying, okay, but we're going to do this, but they still get the State Board of Education on top of it. Right. You don't have that levels of bureaucracy and political intertwining, okay, at the private school level. You really don't. They can hire whoever they want. They fire whoever they want. They're performance-based. Okay, and I think that's something that really needs to be applied to public schools. It's performance-based.
You chatted a little bit about the No Child Left Behind Act that President Bush had put forth. Sure. Where do you think that should go or not go, or?
The whole objective behind No Child Left Behind, at least my interpretation of it is, especially for disadvantaged children, is that everybody has the opportunity to excel. Everybody has the opportunity for a quality education. I agree with that. I don't know anybody in the right mind who would not agree with it. I have some issues, though, okay, with the federal government's marrying Title I funding and No Child Left Behind. I can't vouch for this, that it happens. I've heard maximum innuendos and anecdotal evidence about teachers teaching to the test to allow their students to pass the criteria so they can get the Title I funding. That's not right, Ken. That's not right at all. I've never been taught how to pass the test. I've always been taught how to have the competencies and thinking process that I can figure out how to pass the test on my own. So that's my main concern about No Child Left Behind. And there's some school districts, I'm not saying Bedford, but some school districts will purposely teach the test to pass the students on so they don't lose funding. Well, the problem with that is, you know, it snowballs. They're not competent enough to go to the next grade, but you just pass them to the highest level of their incompetence, the Peter principle. Right. I remember teaching at a private high school, private college several years ago, and I failed the hockey goalie and the captain of the basketball team who went to public high schools. Well, don't you think the coaches for both teams were banging on my door and want to know why I did, an English professor, fail their stars? And my response was simple. I told both coaches, hockey and basketball, I said, look, I don't know anything about hockey and basketball, but if I did, I'd be down on the floor helping you guys out. Please don't tell me you don't know anything about English and you can't help your own players.
Yeah, very good. We got about a minute left. Why don't you just address the voters and tell them why they should vote for you or ask for their vote? How's that?
I'm definitely going to ask for their vote. Thank you, Ken. I believe that it's time in Bedford for the school board to have an educator on board. Some of this been from the rank and file, a blue collar through and through, even though I wear a white collar for school. I have the academic credentials, I have the work experience, I have the passion and vision. I care about students. I don't just walk the walk, I can actually do the talk with educators. I understand the political ramifications between unions. I belong to a teachers union, SEIU Local 1984, Adjunct Faculty Union. I understand the intricacies involved. I understand that taxpayers need a return on their investment. They just can't have education as a big money pit. I have a real problem with the federal government just constantly funding money into education and you don't get the return on the investment. I think the United States, unfortunately, over the last 20 years has been dumbed down when it comes to education. I see that when I go to Market Basket, when I can have a basket full of groceries and I can be within 50 cents of the tally, but the cash register girl or guy still can't make a count. I'm here to help. I'm here to provide my talent, my services to the town of Bedford and the school district. And I really promise you, because I have the time, I'm semi-retired, I got plenty of time to serve on the school board, and I have plenty of time to do the research on behalf of the taxpayers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure to sit here today and chat with you a little bit.
You too, Ken.
And I want to remind the voters, remember March 12th, 7 a.m., 7 p.m., you're going to vote for town council, school board, library trustees, etc. So please show up. Thank you.